Welcome to the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting. We will begin in just one moment. Is everyone having fun with the snow days? I am going to be off camera because I have my little ones here with me. And throughout my workday today, they have decided to participate. So I'm going to keep my camera off to keep their privacy. Let's get started. Happy New Year and good afternoon. This is Committee Chair Kalila Slater Harrington. I would like to welcome you all to the January 7th meeting of the Teaching and Learning Committee. If you have not already done so, please mute your phone. Anyone who does not mute their phone may be muted by the call moderator or removed from the call. Additionally, if you are not a board member or the CEO and her staff, please turn your video off. I will now read a roll call of the board to identify who is on the call. Please identify yourself before speaking for the record. And since I see his face, I'll go with Commissioner Redding Lallinger first.
Present, and your balancing act resonates a lot with me with these snow days. Good to be here.
Good to see you. Isn't it fun doing all your jobs at once? And Commissioner Kenyatta Bay, have you joined us today? He may join us a little bit in the future. Because this is new and different, I'm going to go ahead and go through our protocols for public comment early on, and I'll revisit them at the time on our agenda when it's time. But beginning in February, Teaching and Learning Committee members of the public who would like to provide public comment to this committee can do so by signing up the day of the meeting, beginning at 9 a.m. until the start of the meeting at 3:30 p.m. So if you are on today and have not signed up, be mindful February, you will be able to do so on the day of the rather than a week in advance. Alrighty, that's the update for today, and trying to give Commissioner Bay just a few minutes to join us before we jump into our presentations. And as we do that, I want to acknowledge on our agenda that, as always, we have our board goals. And I see the agenda for today, or the agenda topics for today, to really be in support of our board goals. 80% increase with regard to our student wholeness composite score, 40% increase with regard to the percent of students proficient on the MCAP or ELA literacy assessment, 76% increase in our four-year graduation rate, and 25% of students proficient on the MCAT grade 3 to 8 and Algebra 1 assessment. Our youth development and extended and summer learning activities certainly play a part in us reaching those goals and realizing those goals. And so I'm excited about our presentations today. And I do believe Dr. Dabrowski, Dr. Swinton-Buck, and her team are here. That being said, I will turn it over so we can get those presentations kicked off.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Slater Harrington. Happy New Year, everybody. Wonderful to see you. I'm Joan Dabrowski, Chief Academic Officer, and very excited to be with you this afternoon as we share with you an update on the great work that's been happening in our summer and extended learning areas. But before we start, I wanted to just provide a bit of context about summer and extended learning in light of the past 3 years and what City Schools has accomplished through the use of our ESSER dollars, our COVID relief funds. We were able to lift a level of expansive work in both our work in summer and extended learning, so before school programming and after school programming. And in that time period over the last 3 summers, Baltimore City was a national leader in the way in which it expanded the number of opportunities for young people who desperately needed to come back together in that summer of 2021. And really have opportunities for enrichment and wellness and wholeness in addition to academic recovery. And so you're going to see today some of the great work that those funds allowed us to do with our students this past summer. Additionally, those dollars helped us amplify and expand our credit recovery efforts. And again, both through summer programs, but also during the school year opportunities. And so this is work that we are proud of and work that has allowed us to support young people during a really challenging point in our history. And I say all that to say that we know that our ESSER dollars are sunsetting. And so we've been very clear in our conversations internally and more with our public about our plans to be scaling back in these areas. This is something that we knew this one-time surge of funds was not going to be there for us forever. And so as we share with you this great work today, we're also signaling a very strategic scaling down of this work through a very methodical approach to looking at data, both student outcome data, but also attendance data, costs, volume of programming in general. So we are eager to share this information with you and engage the board as we are, again, methodically thinking through what this will look like in a post-ESSER funding landscape. It's something that we take very seriously as we are in the beginning of our fiscal 26 planning. But it is something that we want to be very upfront with and honest with, that the dollars that we've had over the last few years for summer and extended learning are dollars that will be sunsetting. And so what that means is how we are strategic moving forward is of utmost importance. And so with that, I do want to just signal the great work that was done in this area, who is Miss Lori Lynn Sutton, who is now our executive director for special education, but who lifted incredible work over the last 3 summers during this time period. And while she has moved on to do the work in special education, she remains a strategic thought partner as we're thinking about our plans. And so she has, again, like all great leaders do, she had a deep bench of support from colleagues, one of whom is Lauren DiResto Stasio, who is going to share as the interim director of summer and expanded learning. She will be sharing this presentation after Dr. Swinton Buck gets us started here in just a moment. So I do want to lift up the space that we find ourselves in right now, which is celebrating great work and then also strategically planning forward, knowing we will have fewer dollars to do this kind of work. And so with that, I will, I believe I'm actually going to be tossing it to Lauren first to get us started, and then Dr. Swinton Buck will come in afterwards. So Lauren, I will go ahead and bring you on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dabrowski. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Lauren DiResto Stasio. I am the interim director of summer and expanded learning. I'm going to begin with just our overall agenda during the course of this presentation, which will commence with our connection to, obviously, our board and district priorities and goals. We will then spend some time discussing the extended learning opportunities, have a revisit of the amazing opportunities that we provided to our students for summer 2024, as well as provide you some context surrounding what our students are currently being able to engage in of our offerings of our 24-25 programming, and then a very brief look ahead for what we are engaging in with summer 2025. And so I'm going to take a moment to highlight here that our strategic priorities, which you see boxed off in blue, are perfectly aligned to support our Sur-Day School students through their participation in summer and the extended year programs. And so with our district goals, our extended school year and summer programs serve as critical extensions of our district's missions by providing opportunities that directly address our goals through the incorporation of engaging activities that contribute to increasing our students' overall resilience and support in fostering their love of learning. And so while our district has obviously our 4 identified goals, we view these goals not just as academic targets, but as subsequent investments in the future of our students. And so using those investments and paired with the above listed competencies, we really strive to equip our students with the overall emotional intelligence and social skills necessary to navigate life's challenges and contribute positively to their communities as a whole. Our office mission, which you see listed, is to support with igniting that passion for learning in every single one of our students in city schools. The picture that you see here showcases a STEM opportunity several students had with a summer partner to build a house out of a cardboard box with working lights and air conditioning. And this was a phenomenal opportunity for some of these students, which really provided them with an enriching experience and was something that they would not have otherwise had the opportunity to participate in within a regular school day. And so following what Chief Dabrowski mentioned in our opening, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the opportunities that were offered in summer 2024 and note that the video that you're about to see was prepared by city students in collaboration with one of our summer partners.
I really don't know where I would be if it wasn't for B360. Like, I really don't know, because I done got to see a lot of things. For B360, got to meet a lot of people that I really don't know, because I done got to see a lot of things.
It's an opportunity for kids to learn not only how to ride dirt bikes safely, but also with the main focus on science, technology, to learn not only how to ride dirt bikes safely, and mechanics, but also with the main focus on science, technology, engineering, change the tires, to change the oil. They could possibly go back into that neighborhood to get our children's character traits that they need in life. I feel like it's very necessary because it gives our children's character traits that they need in life.
Yo vuelvo al campamento porque en el campamento aprendimos a comunicarnos más en español.
It's so much better. People that don't know so much Spanish, so much better. People that don't know so much Spanish.
Amaral fits my personality because I'm very Amaral fits my personality. I feel like that's exactly what MRI is, especially I'm very music and I feel like that's exactly what MRI is, especially with
We're building a passive house for a low-income family. We're building a passive house for a low-income family. I'm currently learning how to build a house from the ground up.
Our main goal is to make people happy with the things that we prepare, so that's what we do. And this program is not just about cooking, it's about coming together to make something positive. It helps the youth more stay out of trouble, especially because we express our feelings in the kitchen through plates.
We deal with the development of youth leaders, helping young people become entrepreneurs, and really just help them reach their vision of success based on what they want to do. My mentors, my facilitators, we're all youth. Nobody's older than the age of 24, so it's easier and relatable for young people to feel like we're more approachable than other programs.
Passing the torch on to the next generation is very important. We have a 300,000 downfall worth of welders in the country right now, so they can get a certification which can carry on into the work environment. You know, it could start a good career.
I enjoy being here. The kids will literally brighten up my day every day. We've been making sure we do interactive activities to get them out of their seat. We're also teaching them etiquette and how to properly be a student so they can absorb the content. I would recommend this to all the parents. I mean, it gives the students a chance to get out the house and be with people their own age and still continue to learn during the summer.
We work on trying to train students so we have hands-on learning, virtual learning, and online learning. It gets you in the mindset of like mechanic etiquette, what tools you'll need. We also learn about the types of cars that we work on. This program definitely benefited me because in the future I hope and pray to make my own car company.
This is my first time in this program. It's definitely a great program, I can say, though. I've gotten a lot of experience so far.
I would tell everybody to not miss out on it. If you can get in this opportunity, please do.
And so moving into our school year 23-24 extended learning opportunity reflection, our buckets of work involve credit recovery and expanded learning programs within our overall office. And to support students with having assorted opportunities to thrive, we offered a diverse range of programs, including school-based initiatives and district-wide opportunities. Programs are offered with varying structures, such as 4 days a week or 3 to 4 days a week for our ELP programs, and before and after school options. We maintained a student to staff ratio of 10 to 1 or 15 to 1, ensuring personalized attention, with site leads providing valuable coaching and feedback to staff. We prioritize students who have experienced learning disruptions due to the pandemic, those who were significantly below grade level in literacy or math, and those identified for support in their individualized learning plans. Collaborating with internal stakeholders to identify which students could benefit the most from these programs, and also reaching out to external stakeholders as well. And so what you see on this screen is a level of statistics regarding our school year 24 extended learning opportunities. And these programs contributed to the development of important life skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, and social emotional learning for our students that participated. And we were very lucky to be able to fully fund these programs, as Dr. Dabrowski had previously mentioned, through the utilization of ESSER funds, braided as well with various other grant funds. And so moving into summer learning 24 reflection, the pictures that you see on this screen are reflect various programs which are offered over the summer from assorted partnerships and also YouthWorks. And so YouthWorks, if you're unaware of it, is a program within the Baltimore City Mayor's Office of Employment Development, Youth Services Division. And it provides 5 weeks job opportunities to thousands of Baltimore City students between the ages of 14 and 21. And so we were able, in alignment with YouthWorks, to employ over 1,800 youth through our participation of our summer learning programs. And also acknowledging the potential learning disruptions further caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, as many of our high school students at this point, seniors were freshmen then, we strove to continue to provide our older students with diverse credit recovery opportunities to facilitate successful graduations. And so as you see here, is a picture of our summer 24 graduation, in which 264 summer graduates, which participated in credit recovery, were able to successfully engage upon. And so for our most significant student population, our students with disabilities, within our offerings for summer 24, we were able to provide ESY services for over 1,000 students. And while this occurred at a variety of sites and for a variety of programs, this was the first year, summer 24, where arts integration and robotics were offered, specifically offered at 2 schools, Dorothy Heights and Fort Worthington. The extended year students were kept in separate classrooms for those particular sections, and the artist came to the classroom. There was an artist and art aide within each level of the classroom. We do want to highlight that the students completely loved the artists coming into the classroom, predominantly for music and art, and the integration of the arts into their daily instruction. Robotics was also offered at 2 of these sites, Connections Academy and Dr. Bernard Harris, where also there was robotics instructions which came into the classrooms for the students. And so transitioning for our current programming, what we are currently engaging with is obviously a continued partnership with 34 elementary literacy sites and 5 arts integration sites from some of our partners. We have altered our ELP applications for our schools to really strategically tailor decisions to not only address individualized student needs, but also really focus in on a alignment of end of year MCAP data and the needs of the students to mitigate learning loss based off of any BOI, DIBELS, and iReady data, all of this contingent upon their individualized grade levels. We are also supplementing funding for many of these programs, utilizing our school improvement grants. And that is being encompassed to support the payment of teacher stipends to ensure programmatic validity and also ensure that we were able to continue to provide a vast array of school-based sites for our students. And so for our secondary students for credit recovery, we have launched, which was new this year, a quarterly after-school virtual credit recovery, in addition to our in-person district-run credit recovery and virtual Saturday credit recovery programs. We also expanded our summer pilot of original credit options to students. And so beginning in Saturday school, we will be offering original credit opportunities in Art 1 and 2, Health 1 and 2, Art, Computer Science, and African American Studies. And these programs will be offered to those students virtually or in person in alignment to the best structure that necessitates that of the curriculums. And so looking ahead, and I will send it over to Dr. Swittenbuck.
Yep, thank you, Lauren. So as you all can see, Lauren and the summer and extended learning team has done a tremendous job in lifting opportunities for our students across the city for, summer and extended time. So shout out to you, Lauren, and thank you for sharing this very pertinent information. I think the video really showed the bright spots and like kids having very good experiences and engaged during the summer. And we know that that is integral to the success that we make during the school year. As we look ahead, we do understand that there are some fiscal impacts related to lack of ESSER funding and making sure that we have a strategy for how we sustain and maintain some of the programs where we have identified some bright spots. And so we are going through our data. We've had lots of learning through the implementation of these programs for students. And so in that learning, we are analyzing the data, looking at fiscal impact, identifying student demographics across the city, and making strategic plans about what we will support in this upcoming school year. We also just want to make sure that our summer programming is also in support of new state mandates and policies that are coming out. And so you all are aware that we have a pre-K 3 literacy policy. And so we want to make sure that we have a strategy for supporting that work and making sure that our students are getting the continuation of learning in the summertime. And so a lot of the priority a lot of how we're prioritizing will be based on some of our state mandates, a lot of the previous data that we've collected from summer programming specific to the attendance and engagement across the city. And then we just want to make sure that we're leveraging those data points as we plan for our summer sites for this upcoming school year so that kids have equitable access and we do not, lose in this next iteration of our summer programming. So based on the information that Lauren has shared, and then thinking about how we're looking ahead and planning for the summer, are there any additional factors we should consider when determining summer programming? We are very interested in you all's feedback in this process after you have reviewed what we've presented today, and just thinking about how we can continue to plan for this upcoming school year so that students still have the level of access to meaningful summer and extended learning opportunities.
Thank you for that. I have my questions, but I'm going to defer to Commissioner Redding Lallinger to get us started. I'm not sure if I see Kenyatta Bay here yet, but if you are here, Commissioner Bay, please just raise your hand or let me know you're here and I'll call on you. Commissioner Lallinger.
Thank you. And thanks, team. I appreciate this overview. And I'm not ignoring your question, Deputy Swinton Buck. I have a couple questions that are going to give me some context to help answer the question. The first is just, can you help me understand a little bit? Both you spoke to this and Chief Dabrowski, in the context, talked about the impact of the end of ARP ESSER. And I guess I'm trying to understand, just can you give me some numbers or some scale, like what is the scale of the scale back, if that makes sense, that we're looking at here, just to help contextualize it for me in the form of numbers or programming, and I know all of that isn't fully potentially knowable yet, but can you help contextualize just like the sheer scale of what we're talking about in terms of how much we're going to have to cut back?
So as you mentioned, and I saw Chief Dabrowski come in, as you mentioned, we do not have definitive numbers, available right now, but we do know that there will be a fiscal impact. And so we're planning for that. And as we plan for that, we just want to make sure we have a strategy when we're looking at the programming and making decisions about where we are maintaining and where we may have to pull back on some things. So unfortunately, I don't have a whole number for you, but I do want to just make sure you're aware that there are fiscal implications. And so that will have an impact on where we arrive with our summer programming. But I do think, in the past 2 years, we scaled out and we've done lots of things. And I think there were learnings from those different programming that we've done that has put us in a better space to have a better strategy for across the city of like where the engagement is, where did we have robust attendance, and where equitable access. And I'm just thinking about credit recovery, making sure that kids across the city have, the right access to the school site so that they can attain the credits that they need for graduation. And then thinking about, our enrichment, our academic programming, and then the enrichment programming. And so, of course, we know with our state policies that there's a lot of academic programming and supports that will need to be in place to make sure that this K-3 policy, that we are in support of that and making sure that kids are ready at the start of the school year. And so what I can offer is that we are focusing on a large majority of our programming to be grounded in academic support and kind of continuation of the school year, but then also making sure we have an array of enrichment offerings that can continue some of the engagement that we've had in the past 2 years.
The only thing I would add, and I don't want to misquote, and Lauren, I don't want to put you on the spot. We can certainly go back and share exactly how much we've spent the last few summers, because we do have that very well documented. I know it's hovering near the 20 million mark, which is, again, unprecedented dollars to spend in this area. So we know that there will be a significant reduction in the dollar amount. And I think as Dr. Swinton Buck was sharing, that is something right now we're working closely with finance, because I think what we have done very intentionally in city schools is we look to see where we can use different funding streams, whether it's some of our title grants, to especially where we know we've seen, as this video earlier showed, some very important enrichment, some very important academic, where we can use other funding sources. So even though the COVID funds are no longer there, we have other funds to access. I think we're being very transparent in that we know we're not going to have upwards of 20+ million to invest in these areas. And again, that I think for us is just having to be very intentional as we look at our our return on these investments to make those hard decisions. And I think, especially with this coming in of a new literacy policy, we are mindful of what extended or summer learning programs might we need to have in place, especially for our youngest learners in the area of reading. That's going to have to change our strategy. So I think that's where we have to be somewhat responsive and fluid in how we're looking at these things too. But we can certainly, Commissioner, get for you where we spent the last 3 summers to help us, to help you have that sort of that context and the volume.
Thank you. I was just trying to understand the scale. That's all. I guess just to close out, I don't really have any other questions to close out, for me and trying to answer your question. The short answer is I think y'all are a whole lot smarter than I am. And so all of the things that you said make tons of sense. You're looking at participation rates across the city. You're focusing in on academic interventions. You're really smartly thinking about, the K-3 literacy policy. So I don't have anything to add beyond that. I think you're thinking about all of the right things, and I appreciate the thought that is going into it. I was excited to see, and I don't know much about it, but it looked like in the video, an algebra readiness program. And Chief, you and I have spoken recently about my passion for making sure we get as many of our kids ready for algebra as possible. And so that was really nice to see, and to the extent that we can extend opportunities for kids all across the city to get prepared years before they would even see algebra. I think that kind of stuff is fantastic. But like I said, I think you're thinking about all the right things, and I certainly trust you all who are in the work every day to figure out how to spend precious limited dollars. So appreciate the overview, and nothing further from me.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. I think we're aligned in some of our curiosity about the impact of the decrease in funding. And I think, first of all, I'm so excited about summer learning and youth development programming in general. Really excited about that, and have been just over the moon about what we've been able to accomplish and leverage over since using the COVID and ESSER dollars. I think that it was just a really smart investment to leverage summer. And we saw the increase in graduation rate. I mean, like real tangible outcomes. And that same ingenuity that we put in place with that money, I think we have to leverage it knowing that that money is going away, because we can't just say, well, kids, there's no more money. So, and I think what I've heard is that that's certainly not the position that we're taking, and great deal of thought is going into that. So I don't want to suggest that. What I would, maybe not today, would love some more insight. I hear what you're brilliantly saying, Dr. Swinton-Buck, around, positioning ourselves around this K-3 literacy, making sure that we hold that. But what I'd like to insight in is like what values or what kind of priorities, as you're thinking about that, when you see a decline of 20 million, that's going to be both sites and the number of students served. And so then how do we, from an equity standpoint, make sure that those who need more are still getting more? Right. So that it just impacts every element of programming. And I think you're taking the right steps. I would just be curious about what those guiding principles are that are informing that decision. I hear what you're saying about K-3 literacy, but what are the other things? Maintaining our graduation rates, like what are those things? And then as we as a community think about all right, so then after that, where are the gaps for us, right? Like here's where we don't want to lose ground, and being able to go to our partners at Summer Funding Collaborative, and being able to go to, our partners rec centers who are funding already, right? Like who have programming going on. And Joan, you're going to laugh because I keep harping on this, but how are we bringing our youth development and enrichment partners along? So we can't do this on our own. We can't, clearly we're not going to have the money. There's but where we know that there is programming, how are we able to, I don't know, train summer staff, people who are working with young people during the during the summer, so that we can still kind of realize our goals, or to make sure that, hey, our kids are going to be spending 40 hours a week with you. Let me help you make sure that this is impactful time. And I don't know if it's leveraging some of the resources that we have invested a lot of money in that have come through procurement, or leveraging our wisdom and what we know and helping to train other cadres of staff. So I say all of this like I'm applauding, I'm singing and dancing with you, but I'm also running alongside of you saying, okay, how are we going to still get to our finish line together? All right, so I guess that wasn't a question, but Jonathan Turner and Dr. Judkins, as this thinking continues, I'd love a follow-up on what are the guiding principles here, and how are we ensuring that from an equity standpoint, those young people who need more get more. All right, I think we have one more presentation, and that is our gifted and talented, our gifted and talented, our gifted. Is that still you, Dr. Dabrowski? Are you opening up for that?
Nope. So I believe that was a compliance report. Is that right? Because we did,
sure.
Yeah, that's a compliance because we have a different approach that we're taking for that when we come to you, I think next month for Continuum of Learners.
Cool. All right.
Yep. Yes, but we were going to highlight a few points and then open for any questions, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Dabrowski.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
not a presentation. Nope.
Hi. No, not a presentation. Yeah, I was. Good afternoon, all. Hi, I'm Dennis Futris. I'm the coordinator of Gifted and Advanced Learning.
Welcome.
Thank you. If the committee would indulge me a couple minutes, I will quickly highlight 5 or 6 points from the compliance report and then answer any questions that you might have. I would just draw the committee and everyone else's attention to item 2, where we talk about the total number of students that have been formally identified in city schools. I'm happy to report that while the compliance report reports out 7,682, I can actually say it's 7,762 students as of the 1st of January, because we did have that last week of testing that had to be done, which is an increase of over 1,000 students from last year at this time. In item 3, I'd like to point out, this means that our identification rate is now 10.5%. Last year when I reported to the board, we had just crept over the 10% mark for the first time ever. We're at 10.5% and moving along nicely. Item 4, I'd point out that the way we got there is because our identification rates across our kindergarten students is holding steady at around 16%, in part because of efforts we've done to get out in front to offer more students analogical reasoning exposure through things like Legends of Learning. So we're finding more students at the earliest levels, but also because of talent spotting taking place at schools. We had 1,600 students in grades 1 through 12 that schools basically said, hey, based on reports that we've given them or what they've seen in classrooms, we think this kid could be identified. And when teachers are making those referrals, we're getting up to 20% identification rate. So we're finding even more students there. I link that to item number 6, which is the fact I feel we have a very strong menu of professional development options we offer to our teachers, inclusive of summer intensive, what we call GAL Leads Academy opportunities. You can read through that. I'm not going to read that to you. I'm not going to insult anyone's intelligence there, but I stand by the fact that we have a robust listing of professional development that we offer to teachers both in person and virtually through online opportunities. I would just call to the committee's attention that there is a Burke report that's pending. So this is item 7. We've only been given a preliminary reporting out. I will wait for the final before I report back to everyone. But initially, we had asked them to see if our identification threshold was the right one. Are we balancing equity and excellence? And preliminary findings indicate that we have the right threshold number that we're using. But I'll wait till the final report before I can digest and report that back out to everyone. I will just summarize that our challenges and recommendations remain very consistent over the past 3 years that I've been reporting out on the compliance report. I warmly invite people to read through it. those are carefully and honestly what I feel to be the real challenges and opportunities that we have for continued sustained growth. And I will finish by saying, I think the best summary, and this is literally at the very end, I think the best summary of the work that we've been doing is that this is the 11th consecutive year that City Schools has had schools recognized by the state of Maryland as what we call Excellence in Gifted and Talented Education, or EGATE schools. This is the longest streak of any district in the state of Maryland. We are now up to 22 individual schools being recognized at least once. Many of those schools have been recognized 2 times, one school recognized 3 times. It's a 5-year renewal process. And I want to highlight and call out specifically James McHenry and Charles Carroll Barrister, who this year, for the first time ever, this was their first year applying, and they are earning the recognition that we conferred to them in February. And to me, that is the essence of what it means to be a city schools opportunity, city schools area where we can actually grow and allow. In other districts, schools like Charles Carroll Barrister and James McHenry would not be part of their gifted portfolio. In city schools, they are the heart of our portfolio. I now open it to any questions that any committee members may have.
Well, that sounds like all awesome news there. Commissioner Redding Lallinger, I saw you unmute. Do you have any questions?
I do actually have a few questions here. I appreciate it, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Jutras, for being here today. A couple of questions. First, I'm curious, just as it pertains to what our programming looks like for identified students on the elementary level specifically, because I've been in schools where students are getting enrichment within the sort of traditional classroom setting, where students are getting pull-out time, and then in settings where students are in different tracks, where we actually have a gifted classroom at the elementary level, or section of students rather. And so I'm curious if that captures the range of how our elementary students are being serviced. And I don't know if you have data, but I'm just curious to see what what approaches are most common, and whether or not we as a district encourage schools to adopt certain approaches.
It's almost like I paid you to ask that question, but yes, thank you. That's
I can assure everyone you did not pay me.
I did not. No, for the record, I did not. I have no money to pay people. No, that's an excellent question. In truth, our district is one of supports and services. We don't have programs. So identification doesn't necessarily put you into a program like some of our surrounding districts. So you get identified. Typically, most districts is 3rd grade. You get put into a specialized gifted classroom. And so therefore, it definitely feels uniquely different. Our approach has been, since the inception of the policy and regulations, IHBB and RA, in 2020, has been our minimum agreement with families is what we call the individualized learning plans. So we basically structure, which predate the SLPs. Everyone probably on this call is familiar with SLPs, but ILPs predate that a little bit. And what that is a learning agreement on how we're going to differentiate learning within the classroom for the student. That includes access to things like Renzulli Learning, compacting the curriculum, ancillary curricular pieces. But in some schools, you're absolutely right, they have pull-out services and programs. Those are many of the schools that have elected to use their funds to create what we'd call a full-time position, where the teacher, that there's a person who's actually doing the GAL work and pulling those students out and working with them a regular once a week, 2 times a week, 3 times a week. If I had all the money in the world and we could make things the way that our data would show, that's the most impactful for students, is certainly to be able to, in addition to differentiation within the classroom, is to have that additional enrichment, that pull-out opportunity. So some of those EGATE schools I've called out, one of the things they have in common is that most of them have full-time GAL leads that are doing the work. And that would be the optimal experience. But at minimum, what we're trying to do is, with the creation of the ILPs, is helping the classroom teacher, who has to do so many different things, to give them some guidance on how they can differentiate purposefully. But the upside to that is, because we bring in this differentiated materials, whether it's Jacob's Ladder or M squared, M cubed, we're not saying only the GAL kids get exposure to what some people would say is the good stuff. We're exposing it to all the students. So whether you're formally identified or not, you get exposure to that. And in the course of being exposed to that, we might talent spot.
That's fantastic, and thank you. And I really appreciate that approach where I've seen it. Can you tell me how pervasive the model is of having, say, one first grade classroom that is entirely comprised of GAL identified students and another that is not?
To have a classroom that's just strictly identified as GAL students, I can probably think of one or two schools that have done that. And again, when we historically been trying to do it, this is my 12th year in this gig. So in the very beginning of our approach there was concerns about what would be conceived or perceived as tracking. And we didn't want to have that kind of that negative stereotype, which traditionally has discriminated against the low SES student and students of color. And we didn't want to go down that route. When done well, can, homogeneous groupings of students who have similar abilities fly higher? Yes, they can. The problem is that, but at what expense? You don't want to leave other kids at the door just because they missed an arbitrary, I would argue it's not that arbitrary, but threshold cut score, right? And so our effort has been to be more equitable in offering the access pieces to students.
Well, that's exactly why I asked the question. I appreciate your view on this, and I do get concerned when I see that happening, because of what research tells us about what happens to the students who are not in the tracked class, and it is tracking. I mean, there's no other way way to put it. Could you? I'm aware of one city school that does that. Could we maybe connect offline? I'm curious to know the scope of it in the district. It sounds like it's quite small. And just curious to know how those schools are being very conscious about ensuring that all students are getting the highest caliber opportunities possible.
More than happy to answer any questions from you or from the rest of the committee regarding that. Again, there is one school that comes to mind. I will say that they've actually done it the right way, but it requires a Herculean effort. It's not something I would say is recommended for most schools. But yes, more than happy to address it and follow up any questions.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
To switch gears just a little bit, what efforts are underway? As you know, we've got a growing multilingual language population in the district. This is a group that is often overlooked in gifted and talented identification. What are we doing to ensure that we are identifying students who may not demonstrate some of the attributes in English that we might be looking for that might typically get them an identification? Could you, and I'm not familiar with the instruments. I don't know if it exists in Spanish or in other languages.
No, I appreciate the question. Again, people are going to think I've paid you to ask these questions because that's a question I would ask too. We have for over a decade now been using an instrument called the Naglieri Naglieri Non-Verbal Ability Test, the NNAT3, which specifically was chosen at the origin of the creation of the GAL office to open up opportunities for students who are not fluent or native English speakers to be seen. So you don't have to have any language skills whatsoever to hit that first tier of identification, which we call talent development. So we have 3 tiers of identified learners. Gifted and advanced is pretty traditional and hits those things you normally think of. We added in a number of years ago an entry level called talent development, specifically because I would see, hundreds of kids a year that qualified for higher than average potential and ability, but weren't achieving. Some of those were our ML learners. Some of those were also students of color and certainly students of low SES. And so from our very beginning of the origin story is that our initial screener is completely nonverbal. There is no English language barrier whatsoever. On top of that, we work very closely with what used to be the ESOL office. I think it's ELD now. I'm still learning. We've worked very closely. In fact, we co-presented a year ago at a state conference on gifted regarding our efforts. We look at things like a student access, what some call it WIDA, but it's access. If a student has picked up more than a year's worth of language skills, then that's a student we should be screening or should be looking at, regardless of what grade they're in. Again, we universally screen all our K kids. But like I said, there were 1,600 kids above K who were called out, some of whom are MLs, who the the teachers working with them have called and said this student made 2 years progress on the access screener, and that's not typical. You should see 1 year after 1 year. 2 years is phenomenal, and so part of that's also that referral that we're seeing. That's why we're at a 20% identification rate when it's a teacher's talent spotting versus just universally canvassing. But we've been very cognizant of that, and I would say actually, I'm looking at the charts in front of me, we moved up from our EL designation, now it's ML. A year ago, 6.8% of our GAL students were MLs. This year was 7.9%, so 1.1%. Our equity index should be somewhere around 12%. So we're moving towards making it a more equitable. We're getting closer to what we call an equitable representation of ML students. But we've been called out in national publications in the past. We're actually pretty progressive in identifying our ML population.
That's great. I really appreciate hearing that. I have one last question, and then I'm done. One issue we had when I worked in New York was parents, typically middle and upper class parents, preparing their students for gifted assessments by learning about the assessment, doing practice assessments, bringing in tutors in extreme cases. And so there was what I would call over-identification in wealthy schools. Looking at the numbers in the chart here, certainly would point to higher levels of identification for our schools with less poverty. And so I guess I'm not making any conclusions from just that fact, but I'm curious to know, because I'm not as familiar with Naglieri, is this a trend that you've noticed? Is there an industry of folks helping to prepare people to get their kids to pass this test so that they have this gifted identification? Do you think that's something we should be concerned about at all?
Short answer, no. Longer answer, yes, there is an industry. It's been targeted in places like New York City, in fact, where they do use the Naglieri, and there was an industry to actually start tutoring kids at 3 years of age on the Naglieri in particular. Am I going to say that never have I encountered any family that's ever gone that level? I've heard of one or two. Largely, most families have not taken that drastic step. And I would say largely because we don't have an enticement at the end of the product that says, oh, you get into a specialized program, right? Like if we had if it was a higher stakes assessment with a real great reward of like you get to a special school, then I think there would be a human nature being what it is, then people that had the wherewithal would use that wherewithal to make sure their kids had the best opportunities. We don't offer that enticement. We offer other things, but because the enticement is not as great, I think the temptation is reduced, and as such, it hasn't been an issue. Are we what we'd call, I wouldn't say over-identified, the term that we use in gifted land is well-identified. Are there populations that are well-identified? Yes. Are they white and more affluent? Yes. Are those numbers decreasing overall historically in the past 10 years or 12 years since we've been doing this job? Yes. We're seeing, rises in our African-American population. Certainly our Latinx population has been well identified, students with disabilities. So some of the people that have normally been historically not represented well in gifted education are getting better representation. Are we at equitable levels yet? You can look at the equity index and you can see where there have been strides. We're not there yet. Are the trend data giving me hope? Yeah. And so again, long answer was right there. The short answer is no.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's a big difference between here and New York. You go to a whole entirely different school, and not just New York. You mentioned I was at a school in a different county in Maryland 2 weeks ago, and it was it was one of these second grade to fifth grade, entirely GAL schools, and it's just I think you're right. I think it changes the incentives a little bit. So I appreciate
there are some districts in the state who also declassify you as gifted after you apply for a program, and if they no longer have seats, they no longer list you as gifted. We don't change that. If we identified you, it's our responsibility to meet your needs for as long as you're a city school student, period.
Appreciate that. Thank you for your patience with my list of questions.
Those are great questions. Anytime.
Great questions. Thank you so much, Mr. Jutras, and of course, Commissioner. I'm going to move us along to our procurement. Just one moment. Let me get back to my agenda. Yep, it's time for our procurement items. I think it's Katie.
Shabray's here.
Hi, Shabray.
Hello. Good afternoon, commissioners and city schools family. I'm Shabray Matthews, the Director of Procurement, and we have 2 procurement items for consideration. The first is section 11.01, Schoolworks LLC. The Chief of Staff requests the board's approval of a contract with Schoolworks LLC to provide project management and school effectiveness reviews for 7 schools going through the operator renewal process. The estimated total amount of the contract is $153,900. The contract term is February the 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2025.
Commissioner Lallinger, I don't have any questions on this one. Commissioner Lallinger, do you have any questions?
Yes, and Ms. Matthews, you may be able to answer this, or you may need to go back and crunch some numbers. I've seen Schoolworks come up at least one other time. I'm curious what the total contracted amount between city schools and Schoolworks is for this fiscal year. Do you have that offhand, or is that something you'd be able to?
I don't have it offhand, but I can check it and send it over. Or if you want to give me a quick minute, I can try to look it up.
It's okay. It's not urgent. You could just let me know. I'm just curious because it seems we use them for a couple of different things, and I'm curious, how much we're contracting with them over the course of a fiscal year.
Okay.
The other question.
24.
The other question is more specific to the content here, which is, I'm curious about this appeal. I'm reading about it. It seems like there's 2 main parts of this contract. So one is to do these school effectiveness reviews, and the second part is appeals. Now, is it that I know that they do school effectiveness reviews for schools that are up for renewal, but in this case, are these specific for schools that have appealed and are getting another school effectiveness review? I'm just trying to understand, and forgive me because this is my first time going through the operator renewal process, so I'm trying to understand the link here between the appeals and the school effectiveness review here.
Is there anybody from O&I on the call?
I can follow up with Dr. Alvarez on this one.
I didn't want to cut you off, Sabray, if you had anything.
No, it's okay. I thought Lindsay was going to jump in, but it's okay. He said he will follow up with Dr. Alvarez. Okay. All right. So are there any other questions for Schoolworks?
Not at this time. I don't have any.
Okay, and then I will provide the FY24 amount after this meeting.
Okay.
Okay, second is section 19.01. This is for Game One Fitness, a contract increase. The Chief of Schools and the Executive Director of the Office of Whole Child Services and Support request the board's approval to increase the estimated total contract amount with Game One Fitness to provide recess support, sports league, summer programming, and active healthy schools programming services. The contract term is October 12th, 2022 through October 11th, 2025. The board is requested to increase the estimated total contract amount from $2,201,000 to $3,451,000, an increase of $1,250,000. And I do notice some extra zeros there, so we'll make that adjustment.
I'm just wondering how this aligns with like the summer programming landscape we just heard about, as that is listed here. How is that accounted for in that body of work? And this is school-based selection, right? So I see the list of schools. These are the schools who have elected to use a part of their budget to cover the cost of these services.
Right, so Katia said she would be on to answer any program questions, so.
Yes, I am here.
You're here. Hi, Katia.
Hi, Katia.
Hi, good afternoon. So yes, these are schools that contract with them directly. And they also have an additional set of schools that are in the queue or waiting or would like to begin services. But because this organization was already approaching their cap amount, they weren't able to start those services.
Okay. Dr. Redding, Ellinger, do you have anything for this one?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Okay. Not necessarily a question, but well, it is just we just had a presentation on summer. Just curious as at school-based selected programs that have summer programming, how does that align with or coordinate with what we just learned about summer planning?
I would have to really kind of connect with our colleagues in teaching and learning for that particular part. To my understanding, the way it works is the school is able to individually identify that this vendor will be supporting them in their summer programs. I'm not exactly sure. I can't definitively answer that piece in terms of how it fits into the overall broad scope of the summer plan, summer.
I totally get it.
But
Yeah, no,
the
I
program
can jump
is,
in. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy to jump in. I think as we look to have fewer dollars, schools will have some level of opportunity to make some school-based decisions. And I think it's like anything else, having these opportunities through contracts in place, through again a vetted a vetted group of organizations that we know have done good work in our schools. I think this is where centrally we can procure them and have them as options for schools, but schools will have to, again, make strategic decisions on where and how they spend their limited dollars. Where previously with all of the COVID funds that were available, we were able to pay for a lot of things centrally. That will be shifting as part of our reduction in the available dollars that we have centrally. And that's where I think having this in place for schools who do have the dollars as part of their school-based funding to access, that's, I think, the approach we're trying to get at here. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Katia.
No, that's fine. And I did want to also indicate, in addition to the summer programming, part of the program that they work a lot with, particularly with their Healthy and Active Character Education program, is also through our Judy Centers as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And thank you, Dr. Dabrowski, as well. I think that is it for our questions. Thank you, Shabray. All right, next up on our agenda is our public comment. As I mentioned, there has been a change, so I want to reiterate that beginning in February, members of the public who would like to provide public comment to this committee can do so by signing up the day of the meeting, beginning at 9 a.m. until the start of the meeting at 3:30 p.m. Individuals or groups interested in providing, individuals or groups interested in providing comments to the committee may sign up one of three ways. Contact the board office, visit the board office at 200 East North Avenue, or email the board office at schoolboard@bcps.k12.md.us. Up to 5 individuals will be given the opportunity to provide comment to the Teaching and Learning Committee. All comments must be relevant and address teaching and learning related issues, and speakers will be granted 3 minutes. In addition, the chat function during our virtual meetings will not be used as a tool for gathering feedback or answering questions from the public. All righty, so everyone will have the opportunity to sign up should they want to. And our next teaching and learning meeting will take place on Tuesday, February 4th, where we'll be talking about supporting our continuum of learners. Please feel free to contact the board office in between if you have any questions or concerns or would like to sign up for public comment. With that, I will adjourn the meeting if my fellow commissioner doesn't have anything to add. We're all good. Hope you all will stay tuned for our upcoming meetings. Our board meeting is next Tuesday, and we have Colmar meetings coming up in between. So looking forward to seeing some of your faces, and please check out our website to participate, increase your participation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.